In this episode of The Interrupted Path, we speak to Alan Tang, Chief of Startups. It's such a brilliant conversation. He talks about being at the top of his profession and then starting again in a completely different field because, as he says, well, what's the worst that can happen? I learnt a lot from him and I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I hope you do too.
If there were outtakes, this would be a great one because we just started the podcast without me pressing record. That's just because Alan is so relaxing. I'm just going to say that. So you missed my brilliant introduction before, but what I was saying was that I've really had the pleasure of meeting Alan before because we were talking about Scaleup, which is this really incredible project we're going to hear more about. But before we go into that, I think we've got to go with the CV. And Alan, if your CV landed on my desk, and as I say that, I don't know why it would land on my desk, but if it did, what would it say?
I'll apply for a job now, right? Straight after the podcast.
Yes, please.
So I wear many hats, right? So right now I'm a fractional chief of staff to different startups. So what that means is that I go into different startups and I help them solve a problem, whether that's setting up a new revenue stream, setting up a new procurement function, fixing their processes, automating their finance team, whatever that is. I'm just going to get involved and just dive right in. I love that sort of problem solving element. And the fact that it's fractional means that, I can move around different projects to fit my lifestyle. Because the thing that I found in the last sort of 10 years is about balance. So that's one sort of half of my life. The other half is that I'm currently the co-founder of an education program called CoLab, so Collaboration Laboratory, which is essentially an online program that teaches kids life skills through the use of games, discussions, and escape rooms.
You wear a lot of hats. That's a lot of stuff. I've got to process some of that. That's a lot of stuff going on, but it all sounds really interesting and really important, actually. You do a lot of work with sort of developing people and developing children, it seems, or developing organizations. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of fell into it, to be honest. So education and sort of volunteering was never on the agenda, right? So growing up in an Asian family, it was all about working hard, getting promoted, becoming partner of a firm, buying a flat, buying a house, buying property. It was always about, this sort of this rat race, and I was on that, right? So from after graduating uni, went to corporate finance, did 6 years in renewable energy, was comfortable, right? I was a director by 24, bought a flat by 25, and it was very much like, what do I do now? What's next? And I had this almost quarter life crisis, and that really changed who I am and what I did. And I ended up focusing more on giving back, not trying to just work for money, and also like chasing these different passions. And there's another story here, which was where I went into the chefing world and became, went to hospitality, became a sous chef, did all sorts of stuff. And I just didn't really want to work for money. Like, money is obviously important, but it's not the key driver for me. And I really loved that feeling of being able to contribute and build something great. So whether that's volunteering at the Hackney Chinese community and helping them move to a new venue, whether that's helping international students find jobs in the UK through just mentoring and CV coaching, or whether that's running CoLab and doing this sort of educational approach, that sort of gives me that sense of fulfillment that a normal job probably couldn't.
It seems that it's quite young that you sort of came to that moment, that epiphany, that that money isn't the only thing that you recognize it's important, but it's not the only thing that's mattering. Because that's quite young to have done that. Because I feel like I'm just sort of kind of working out now, hang on, am I actually doing what I want to do in life, and making big changes? So that makes me wonder, like, what was it about? What do we need to understand about you and your childhood to really understand what made you the way you are? And I wanted to almost, and I thought, I don't know if you're going to like me saying this, but you sound like a high achiever, like someone who just went for the best from the beginning. And I thought you might find that term a bit annoying. I don't know, but what is there about your?
I've never considered myself to be a high achiever, but reflecting back, maybe I was. I don't know. My childhood was pretty typical. My parents are first generation immigrants to the UK. They own a fish and chip shop in Sussex, and they were so busy that they didn't have a chance to look after me, right? So I grew up with my grandparents in Hong Kong for about 6
Okay.
years. And I loved it, you know, the food, the culture, like just being like the only boy, the only child in the family was amazing, right? You get all the extra attention. And I lived in Hong Kong for a couple of years, and it was amazing, like genuinely amazing.
Mm.
I think I came back to the UK around 5 years old, and to be
Okay.
honest with you, I remember it being a massive culture shock, right? Not understanding the language,
Mm.
missing grandparents, the cold. I remember the cold very distinctly, and
Right.
that was very, you know, it was memorable because I had to adapt. I couldn't just be like, I want to go back. I had to adapt to a new way of living, and maybe that's kind of where this resilient mindset started coming in from. In terms of my childhood, parents are very driven on academic success, you know,
Mm.
and it was, you know, 5 days a week of school, tutoring 2 days a week, and then Chinese school on Sunday, which I actually hated. I remember saying to my dad, I don't want to go, and he said, I'm going to make you go, and you'll thank me in the future. And only 5 years ago did I realize that actually I thank him for it, because I got in touch with my culture. I started learning
Mm.
language, and it's so much harder to learn when you're older.
Mm.
And you know, parents aren't always right, but a lot of the time they are, and I feel like that's actually quite useful to know. But yeah, very much driven on academic success, and on the weekends it was very much working for the family, right? So on Friday nights I would be in the chip shop serving, definitely underage, but you know, happy to help out. And then on Saturday mornings, like in the back, peeling potatoes, prepping the fish, all that stuff.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was, I thought it was normal, to be honest. I didn't know better, and to be honest, I liked it. Even though it was cold, it was wet, it was hard, you start to build this resilience. You think, I can do this, you know, time will fly by, and it means you're very comfortable of just being with your own thoughts and being alone.
Mm.
uh, I know some people have to always be around other people, but I was like, I could just peel these potatoes, do the fish, just keep going. But saying that, you know, I make it sound like it's child labor. I loved it. I really enjoyed it, and my childhood was also really fun, right? I had a really close knit of group of cousins. I think I had like 12 cousins at that point. We'd come around every Sunday, you know, we'd hang out, we'd mess around, and I had some great primary school friends. So although I was like a different upbringing, it wasn't, I don't think it's that different.
Sounds less like child labour if you're saying with a big smile on your face. I think it sounds like you survived it. I don't know if that's just like, I don't have to peel potatoes, but you do stuff around cooking, so there's
Yeah.
definitely something that stayed with you from that.
Well, I've always, like, food's always been a massive part of our community, our culture, and for me, it's always been a really big thing. I grew up wanting to be a chef. My parents were like, absolutely not. You know, we work really hard. We're not sending to uni to just go and be a chef.
Mm.
And me and my dad had this deal, which was very much, if I can get a qualification, go to uni, get a qualification after that, get comfortable, buy a flat, I can do whatever I wanted. And he was like, sure, do it. Because I don't think he actually thought that I would go through with it. And
Mm.
I got to, well, I was 24, director, six-figure salary. I bought a flat, and I thought, okay, what's next? And that point was like, okay, let's try it out. I've got nothing to lose.
Mm.
If I go into the chefing world and it doesn't work out, I can always fall back. And to be honest, I think that was a really important part of my life, because taking that leap into the unknown is scary, right? I
Yeah.
didn't know what to expect. I've never been in hospitality, and I was a good home cook, but to actually cook in a restaurant is almost like the military. It's very regimented. It's very process driven. And I was so naive to think it would just be like, cook whatever you want. And I started from the bottom, right? Like, literally, I remember distinctly going in the suit after work to 3 of my favorite restaurants, knocking on the back door. The head chef comes out and he's like, customer entrance is the other door. And I said to him, no, I want to be a chef. He looked me up and down and he thought I was crazy. And I was quite surprised. I got 3 job offers in you know, 3 trials. I think they were desperate for people, but I got the job, and that kind of flicked a switch in my head. It made me think, this is possible. If I can make that transition from, you know, of 2 very different industries, what's to stop me trying something else? And that was really powerful, because it's helped me have this mindset of, let's try it out. What's the first happen? Because you see that a lot in kids these days. they have this fear of failure and this sort of need for perfection, but perfection doesn't exist. You know, it doesn't, and you almost have to embrace the chaos, embrace that randomness that can come, and actually that's where lots of opportunities and experiences that will shape your life. That's where it will happen.
That's really incredible, actually. And I've just got this image of you being this young director and, you know, fulfilling the bargain with your dad, and then deciding you were going to be a chef, and then knocking on doors and someone giving you the opportunity. And I think actually that's really brave. Then, you know, to do that, and really determined. It's like you'd made a decision, and you were going to do that. And I just really love what you say about how, you know, it wasn't about striving for perfection. Actually, it was about something else. It was about almost like saying, we can be, you know, we can do more than one thing. Like we can be different things. And how was it in the kitchens when you was it okay? I mean, you went from being a director to being told what to do.
I had no illusions that I would be from the bottom, right? So I joined as a commis chef. I was KP, kitchen porter, for a bit. You know, I just wanted to throw myself in. I had no ego, went in and said, look, teach me everything. I'm going to assume I know nothing. And I think a lot of the chefs really appreciated that, because for them, it's not about ability, it's about attitude and your work ethic. And, you know, I would stay late, I would get in early, I would work as hard as I could. And I loved it, to be honest. The energy in the kitchen is just like nothing else. There's this camaraderie that makes you want to work as a team. And look, I've been screamed at, shouted at so many times. I've made mistakes. I think on the second day, I almost broke one of the most expensive machines. But you know, I made up for it, and I had this almost desire to learn every day. I'd go in, I'd learn something new, I would reflect on it, improve on that, make it better. And within 6 months, I was running service on my own. I was basically doing orders. I was sous chef. And I was like, this is cool. And just to see that progress was amazing. But the best thing was being able to be around food, tasting food, meeting like really cool people. And then when you serve the food to customers, you see the smile on their face, them coming down to the kitchen to say, best meal I've had this week. It makes your day. And loads of cool stuff came out of it, right? I catered for David Attenborough's, I think it was his 90th birthday, maybe his 80th birthday.
Oh, wow.
Met Keira Knightley, like loads of these actors and actresses at Oxford. And just like meeting loads of people who were from different walks of life, and you start to be really adaptable, right? It's just not coming from the corporate world. It's like, this is how it works and this is what you do. But going to that chef world, you almost have to adapt every single day, because an ingredient might not have turned up, or the oven's broken down, or, you know, this customer's allergic to garlic, chili, spices. What do you cook for them? And you almost have to be very, very creative. And I don't consider myself to be creative, but that experience unlocked something, and it's helped. You know, people think that you can't transfer skills because you move from one sector to another. That's absolutely not true.
Yeah.
Having that chefing world experience and then that sort of consultancy experience has allowed me to be the chief of staff, because I can adapt to different situations. I have that, you know, sort of intensity of working, meaning that I can actually deliver stuff really quickly. And because you're bombarded with information as a chef, you start to retain that. And going into this world as a consultant, people can tell me stuff and I'm like, okay, get it, absolutely, get it done for you. And I think that's really useful. So yeah, I would recommend it. I wouldn't say go all in and go crazy, but you know, every experience matters.
It sounds incredible. And I was actually going to ask you what skills you think you learned from being in the kitchens compared to being a director, but you kind of answered that when you talked about the creativity and, you know, having to respond to a situation in its moment and think. It sounds like creativity was one of the big things you took out of it, and not seeing yourself as a creative person, but then being creative. I
almost want to take that sentence back, because I think everyone has that creativity. They just maybe don't have that courage to try it and experiment.
Yeah.
I think, you know, being a chef, I say this to a lot of people, like, being a chef isn't just following a recipe and then being able to make it. That's just being a soldier, executing, right? It's when you don't have the resources, you have to adapt. So in a fridge, there might be 6 ingredients. Make a dish out of that. That's really how you become a good chef for me. And just learning that was really cool. And I have this opportunity coming up where I'm going into a school to talk about, you know, how to cook and giving these kids life skills. And the theme that I want to go down is how do we, if I bring in 6, 7 random ingredients and maybe do like a ready, steady cook style challenge, what to make from that, right? Because it doesn't have to be, this is the dish and I'm buying all these ingredients for it. They should be transferable. You should be able to adapt them to different uses. Because otherwise, you know, you're going to use that ingredients once and then it'll go off and you'll throw it away. That's
and it's real life, actually. I mean, how many times I go into my kitchen, I'm like, oh, I've just got 4 things. Like, there's no recipe that has these 4 things. So, you know, learning how to do something with that would be like brilliant. And I think that's, you know, being able to do things with what we've got.
Yeah, I do think that that's a real key skill, because when I'm you know, in the startup world as an employer, you want people to be resourceful, and a lot of the times that you don't have the perfect situation. You can't just wait for the perfect situation for you to be able to deliver a certain thing, and that's a skill that you just have to develop over time, right? It won't come immediately, but if you start to practice that, it becomes a muscle, and then you can start to use it. So maybe, Samuel, next time you're in the kitchen, give it a go, see what happens.
Oh, I will do. I've already inspired. I'm going to do it now. So I mean, I feel like a lot of when you talk about your childhood and you talk about all the different things you were doing, like school and then working in your parents' fish and chip shop and peeling potatoes and stuff at a young age, but then doing Chinese school and then playing with your friends. Like, it just sounds like you're doing so many different things, and that all worked for you. So it doesn't surprise, it's not hugely surprising when you talk about that and you talk about just adapting and moving around different things. It wasn't something you'd never done before. But to me, it sounds like although you made big changes, it doesn't sound like they were interruptions that impacted you. It almost sounded like you were flowing from one thing to another. Is that fair to look at it like that? Or am I romanticizing your story?
I mean, it didn't feel like that at the time. There are multiple, I guess you can call them inflection points that stick. You know, if I think back to certain moments in my life, I was never academically driven, but there was one point where I remember not studying for a Chinese exam. I think I got 0 in that exam. I laugh about it now because I was going to the exam. I remember sitting down and being like, what? And then taking the exam results home with a 0, showing it to my parents, and that look of disappointment on their faces, like, I promised myself I would never fail another exam. And that's actually something that's driven me. Like, I haven't failed another exam since, and maybe that was an inflection point that, you know, maybe that failure was really crucial to this lifestyle, right? I think, you know, living in Hong Kong from a young age and then adapting, that was really powerful. There were a few things. Trying to think what else comes to mind. Yeah, in Grant Thornton, where I worked and trained as an accountant, you know, there was almost like this nudge from one of my mentors to actually start doing extracurricular things. So he said, go to this charity speed dating event and start volunteering. And I met someone there. I became a trustee for this charity. Didn't just open a lot of doors, it also exposed me to a lot of opportunities. You know, I had to put myself outside my comfort zone. I ran the London Marathon for them. I did a skydive for them. Both things that I would never do again. And it kind of just, that led to other things. I ended up doing a off-road cycle around Iceland for a charity. And it's just, what I learned was actually these interruptions, these disruptions, these opportunities, if you say yes, they open up like doors. And I think it's really important to try. Like, don't expect anything, just say yes, see what happens.
What I love about the way you say things, you casually drop in that you ran a London Marathon. It's like, that's no easy thing. You have to train for that. So that's, it's really impressive. But so you mentioned a mentor. Did you and who were your mentors? Who were the people that, how did you keep doing this? Like, where did that all come? I know you talk about being resilient and, you know, and being brave, you deciding early you were going to just try different things, but did you have mentors? Did you have anyone that's kind of supported you in that, or encouraged you or inspired you on your journey?
Let me have a think. I think at university, I had a really good core of friends who were very driven, very motivated. And I think, they say surround yourself with people you aspire to be. Like that sort of economics group that I hang out with, still friends with now. They were really inspiring. A lot of them have gone on to do some really amazing things. But I wouldn't say they were mentors. They were more almost like peers. At Grant Thornton, I had two mentors who really helped me. So one was John Wallace. He was this guy that worked in audit, and he was always looking over my shoulder, giving me the best opportunities, asking me to take jobs, like really pushing me to be the best I could be. And to this day, thankful for him for giving me those opportunities. I think the other one is, I'm trying to think who else along that journey. The other one was my manager at Statcraft. He was a CFO, really like great at his job, really senior. But he took me under his wing and kept giving me advice, not just on the work aspect, but on the human aspect. And I think that's not something that people talk about in work and in that space. Actually, if you think about the most successful people in your life, they tend to be people who are very good with other people. And it made me realize this isn't just about how good I am at my job, but it's also about how I come across, the relationships I have, how I react to certain situations, my demeanor, my body language. It's stuff no one tells you.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree. And learning how to do that as well. It does take time to realize how important that is. That's so true. And I think that's so valuable that you found someone that was able to sort of illustrate that or demonstrate to you in a way where that resonated with you.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, Samreen, I regret not finding mentors and coaches earlier on. So I found it quite hard to find a coach, and there are a few people now. So Jason Sprague, who he won't say he's my mentor, but I met him on this platform called Lunch Club. We chatted. We meet up every 6 weeks, and it's great to have him always be like a sounding board to be accountable. I wish I did it earlier. Genuinely, I wish I did it in my 20s, but no one tells you, right? No one tells you to go and find a coach or a mentor. You assume that life just works and you figure it out, but actually, I think it can make a huge difference, right? And I would say if anyone is listening to this, like reach out to people on LinkedIn, on other platforms, and just ask for help. Maybe 6 years ago, a Mexican student reached out to me on LinkedIn. It was like, I'm looking to get a job in the UK. I'm an international student. My girlfriend's here. I studied here, but I'm back in Mexico. I'm finding it hard to get a job. And he said, look, can you help me? And I was like, sure, let's have a chat. He's very driven, he's very motivated, and he's very smart. So I don't think I did a lot, but through coaching, helping him interviews and all this stuff, he ended up getting a job at Amazon, was on their grad scheme, and now he's just got a job offer from somewhere else as like a senior data analyst. And it's really cool to see that progression. And he always says to me, I really am thankful that I reached out to you. Thank you for helping me along the way. There are many people who want to do the same thing, but they just don't know how to give back. And I think if you do reach out, people will want to help.
I really agree with that. And I think that's often like the first barrier towards being able to access change or have help is being brave enough to even talk to people about stuff. And that's such a brilliant example of that, of reaching out. That's really incredible. So in terms of role models and works and mentoring, a lot of the projects, I think of CoLab a bit. Can you explain a bit about CoLab, about what that is and how that works?
Yeah, of course. The story is that we wanted to, as employers, we noticed that a lot of graduates were coming in and interviewing, with us, but they had the skill on paper, but in reality, they didn't have the right ability to articulate themselves in a conversation. They didn't have the confidence to maybe try something different. They were almost too afraid of making a mistake to ask a question or probe a bit deeper into something. So we might give them a problem set, which is slightly outside of their comfort zone, and they have the skills to do it, but they don't know how to break it down. It was frustrating, right? Because they can do it, but they either are too scared to try, or they don't know how to apply the skills they have to a different scenario. It's just like, okay, I have the formula, but I don't recognize the pattern. And so that's from a sort of an employer's perspective, but also from a, listening and talking to so many parents, you realize that actually a lot of kids don't enjoy school anymore. They find it really hard. They don't have that agency. They almost have that curiosity taken out of them. And I think that a lot of the issues to do with engagement, the way we teach in the school is great. Like, I think schools are great, but it probably caters to the average student. But the average student doesn't exist. So how can we start giving a bit of personal tailoring, coaching, facilitation, whatever it is, to actually help unlock that potential in the child? So what we did in CoLab was we started this international program that's online, aimed at kids from 7 to 14. And we use games, discussions, and escape rooms to teach them these life skills, right? So communication, leadership, emotional intelligence, empathy, impulse control. All of that is done through experience, right? So you get thrown into a series of challenges. You don't know how to play them. You don't know how to do it. And you have to figure it out in a team. You have to ask questions. You have to experiment. You have to make mistakes. But the whole point is that as a group, you're learning together and you're driving it together. You're very intentional on international students, so kids from around the world, because we want to share languages, to share cultures, to really, remove any unconscious biases that they have. Very intentional letting the kids figure stuff out, because again, it's about developing that agency rather than a teacher saying 1 + 1 = 2. Let them figure it out so that actually they have a system that they remember for the rest of their life. I've had game theory is something that sticks in my mind because my economics teacher talked about it, and then he sort of gave some real life examples, and I got obsessed with it. I was talking about it for weeks. I still remember all the theory or the books I read about it. And we want that to be, inspiration for the kids. With CoLab, it's always about the facilitation. So we have live facilitators who are coaches, who are guides, and they bring the curriculum to life. At the moment, we have a challenge based around Egypt, and the concept is almost this trolley problem, right? So was it right to build this dam, which relocated a lot of people and caused a lot of issues and cost a lot of money, but it saved a lot of lives and had a lot of other economic benefits? What's the right choice? There is no right or wrong answer here, but we let the kids discuss it and figure it out.
That's brilliant. And I really love at the heart of that, and there's so much more going on, is that idea of learning through curiosity. And, I think when things become really exam centered or exam centric is the only way to kind of teach in a really formulaic way, to take curiosity away. I think of that more as being an English teacher. Like when I see English that can be so creative and analytical and interesting, can just become around formula. So I love that. And I love that it's international, that, it's a big community. That sounds really incredible. And I know you've been nominated for an award.
Yes, thank you. We have been nominated for the award, and we're amongst some really amazing peers in that award category as well. It's by the guys at the Edu Futurists, who we've done the podcast with recently. And yeah, we'd love to win it. We're under the innovation category. But just to be nominated is, recognition of the work that we're doing.
It really is.
And it's exciting. I mean, going back to your sort of example of English, right? So a lot of people think of maths as just like shapes and formulas and adding up. But actually, maths is a huge part of design, right? It's about proportions. It's about, and once you can start to explain this sort of interdisciplinary approach and how, maths can feed into art and design, and how English can feed into other things, it no longer becomes a sort of segmented approach to learning. You start to understand how it all fits together as a whole piece. And that's where it gets really exciting. And this is what I think some of the more forward-thinking educational institutions like LIS, London Interdisciplinary School, that's what they're trying to do. And when you see that, you think education has got so much going on for it. There's so much stuff. The potential is there. It's just whether we're willing to take that risk.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's also how we learn best, when learning is about the real world we live in, not something abstract. So I absolutely agree with that. Well, I'm really curious, out of all the stuff you've done, what are you most proud of?
I would say CoLab is the thing, because I've never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I've never, felt like I would start a company. And when you see the feedback and the impact that it has on these kids, right? When they're more confident in school, they're able to make friends easier. They start to this learning mindset into other parts of their life. It just makes us happier because we know that we're making a difference. And we were thinking about this the other day, like what's the best thing we could do with our careers? This sort of, where should you focus your time? And actually, if we can help 100, 1,000 kids be their best selves, the multiplier effect is so big. It's bigger than anything that I could do on my own. So I'd say that, but there have been some other really cool experiences, right? Like saving companies from bankruptcy. So Kodak was one of my old clients, and I remember being 20, going on to this job, flying to America every month, and they were probably 2 weeks from chapter 11 closing down, and I spotted something in the file. I dug into it. I talked to the tax partner, who said, "Yeah, we can use this to save the company," and that turned it completely around. And I was like, oh, wow, he can make a difference. And that was a really, really cool moment.
That is a cool moment. Yeah, that's definitely cool. Alan, I actually feel like I could talk to you for ages. I really do. You've done so many things. And I think every time, like, we'd have to take one area and be like, I want to know more about this. It's so fascinating. And, I'd really love the last words to be yours. So if there were any young people that you'd reach out to and give advice to, anyone that maybe has faced challenges you faced, wanted to make big changes, not felt like they were able to, have you got any words of wisdom, any strategies you would share?
I wouldn't say any words of wisdom. I'm still learning about myself.
Humble, that's the issue.
There's a couple of things I would definitely, it's taken me a while to figure out. One is try and find balance in your life. Don't just go all in on something. Take it easy. Everyone says, follow your dreams, chase your passion, do something you love. It's useful and it's a great thing to do, but actually when you do something you love every single day, it becomes a chore, it becomes the norm, and you no longer love it. So I would say try and find that balance of, okay, find something that pays the bills and allows you to live your lifestyle, and then spend the rest of your time finding that thing, doing that thing that you love. That balance is really important. I would say, we talked about this earlier, reaching out to people. People want to help you. Be humble, be nice, ask for specific advice, and people out there will want to help you, even if it's an introduction, some feedback, maybe like a job offer. Those things can really change your life. And then just finally, don't be afraid of trying something different, right? Like, I would say my life has turned out the way it is because I've said yes to different things and I've not been afraid to just give it a go. What's the worst that can happen? Genuinely, what's the worst that can happen? And losing this sort of fear of failure and maintaining this mindset of curiosity will do you a world of good.
Oh, Alan, that's just brilliant. And I just hope anyone listening would be more open to help, more open to listening. Thank you so much. I'm so appreciative of you taking the time to talk to us today. Thank you.
Absolutely, my pleasure, Sammy. Thank you so much.
Thanks.